And he suddenly realized and had enough sense to think that army would settle me down because I was completely flunking school and just completely gone off the rails. So Dad said, give me those papers, I'll sign them. He said, when you get in that army, young man, he said, you won't act like you act around this house. And that was the first prophecy I think I heard. And boy, it was true. The army, a year in the army, before they found out how old I was and kicked me out, right after Pearl Harbor is when they kicked me out. I went out in January '42. But that settled me down. When I went back, I went into the high school and I told them I wanted to take all the courses they'd possibly give me, and I made a straight B average immediately, and just I knew I was straightened out from that standpoint. And then this dear lady, the mother of one of my best friends of us three that were the wildest kids in town, she invited me over to her house to talk about her son because he had to stay in. See, the rest of the boys that I joined with, they were older, so they turned 18 while we were in there. They were like 17. I was the only real runt,
All right.
And so when she got me over there, I found out she wanted to win me to the Lord. And I, of course, knew nothing about Christianity, nothing about anything. And so she did everything wrong in leading a teenager to the Lord, but the one thing she did do right was she was persistent and she loved me. God had given her a love for me, and that woman would not give up. And so she struggled with me for several months until I saw the light and knelt in her dining room and accepted the Lord.
And that was right before you went back into the service,
Yeah.
into the war.
And see, then by this time I'm in high school and making up my grades and everything. But the problem is, I went all out for the Lord. I actually almost knew the whole Bible from cover to cover, believe it or not. I knew roughly, not detailed, but and I was witnessing to other kids and everything else, and there wasn't a single young person I knew that was a Christian.
Yeah.
Really knew the Lord.
Right.
And in fact, in that day, all of the big churches, there were about 8 of them, like the Lutheran and the Presbyterian and the Baptist and so on, none of them were preaching the gospel.
Yeah.
They were all what we call modernistic.
Right.
They had a social gospel.
Yeah.
And so it was really something. But these old ladies, a group of these old ladies, they controlled the Sunday schools of all these churches.
Uh-huh.
And they were trying to preach the gospel. All of them were living on their Scofield Reference Bible. The wonderful Scofield, I still use the Scofield Reference Bible because the notes are so good. And that was the only Bible with notes in that day. That was the only study Bible there was. And that was the state, that was holding everybody together out there when there was nobody preaching the gospel. And they listened to the radio too. There was one guy on the radio, it might have been Charles Fuller, but I'm not sure.
Yeah.
But one preacher nationwide was preaching the gospel on the radio, and they'd listen to him. And that was their Christianity. And then they were in these modernistic churches trying to win kids to the Lord, but they weren't getting very far.
But now
She got a burden for me for 2 years, a tremendous burden for me.
Mm-hmm.
She said she never cared for anyone except her own son like she cared for me. So God gave her that burden, and she won me to the Lord. But the problem was, after a while, I was having so much fun in high school. Because, see, I was quite popular. Having been in the Army, it made me more popular with the girls, and I just was having a ball, and my senior year was just really something, I was dating the most beautiful girls in school, and we were all really having a lot of fun, not doing anything bad. It was a good, wholesome group. But So I drifted away from the Lord. I quit reading my Bible and quit going to church and everything.
But did you enter the service and enter the war knowing the Lord?
Yes, I knew the Lord, but I was backslidden.
Okay.
And that was why when I first got in battle, I thought sure that I would get killed, because I thought the Lord is mad at me. You know, I've gone back on him.
Right.
Come on up if you want to come up. I'd gone back on him, and so Leyte Island was our first engagement. See, the way I got in, I was drafted right out when I finished high school. And at the draft station, we had taken an IQ test up at the University of Kansas. See, this was a university town. I was in Lawrence, Kansas. It was nothing but Kansas University. That was all there was practically. The town was only 20,000 people. And so I didn't even know what it was for. They just took us up there to the college, up to the university, and gave us a test one day. They didn't tell us anything about it or anything. We didn't think anything about it. But when I got in the Army, I found out that they used that test to determine our IQ. And everybody that had a certain level of IQ or above, they put in an Army, what they call the Army Specialized Program, Army Specialized something program, ASTP, I think they call it. And so we were sent to universities to study rather than going to war, because they were wanting to conserve the better minds of the country. So I was sent to the University of Wisconsin. First they gave us a real rough basic training, the worst they had, and went to Fort Benning, Georgia, where the paratroopers were trained, and we got trained. So we had a real rough 16 weeks of basics. But anyway, then they put me in the University of Wisconsin to study engineering.
Really?
So seemingly I was going to miss the war.
Wow.
And also I was having a ball again, because there wasn't any men on the campus. They were all in the Army. And so we had our choice of all those girls in those sororities. They were all anxious to date us. So every weekend we'd have a ball. So here again, I wasn't getting to the Lord, you know, I was just having fun. But boy, the Lord wasn't through. And all of a sudden, after 1 year, one semester of all I took, they decided to disband the whole program.
No kidding.
And they just disbanded it and dropped us in a line infantry outfit.
No.
I would have probably gotten some other outfit otherwise, but we had no choice. And it was the 96th Infantry Division, and it hadn't gone overseas yet. It was one of the last ones to go overseas.
Yeah.
And it had about half strength.
Yeah.
And it was at Medford, Oregon. And these older men in there, they were like in their 30s, you know. And we young guys, all these brains out of college, were dropped with them, and we made a funny mix there, you know, that kind. A lot of these guys were farmers and truck drivers and things like that, you know, just ordinary men.
Yeah.
And here we were, you know, extra smart kids. So anyway, then they decided to train that 96th Division. They didn't have special forces in that day, but really what they had in mind was to make us like special forces. They had the Green Berets, I understand. I didn't really see a Green Beret, but I'm sure they were there. And so they had some special, but for some reason they decided to train us especially to do assault things and aggressive things. And so they sent us down to be trained by the Marines. And we went down to California to get amphibious training with the Marines and everything like that. And they sent us to Hawaii for jungle training and so on like that. And then they sent us overseas. And our first engagement was the Philippines. We were the ones that entered first in the Philippines.
Was that around 43 or 44?
Yeah, 44 I think it was. Wait a minute. I think it was 44. I forget just when Leyte was, but I think it was 44, early 44. And we saw some very fierce action there. We almost got wiped out of the company the first day. But
Jason?
but it wasn't near as bad as later. But that was when God started saving my life. See, when we went ashore, we made a salt landing, and when we went ashore, I was scared to death. I thought, oh my, I've gone back on the Lord. He won't, I'll be killed if anybody's killed. A lot of these guys were outright sinners, just plain old sinners. And they were praying and hoping God. And I said, they don't even know who God is. And here I know, and I went back on him, so I'm in special. God's especially mad at me. So I figured I'll be killed as sure as anything, and that's how I felt when I went in. But God started saving my life miraculously, and I mean miraculously. At first, of course, I didn't think it was. Like, for instance, I won't even mention the first one. It happened right the first night on the island. But about 4 days later, or 5 days later, my platoon made a probe into enemy territory to find out what was going on. And I was point man, and we were going like a wedge, and going in there, just a platoon, about 40 men. And all of a sudden, I stopped. I don't remember now what it was that stopped me, but suddenly I stopped. And I was standing looking. Something stopped me. And I was just standing looking like this. And, I'm loaded with ammunition and my gun and everything, And all of a sudden, this Jap right in front of me fired. And that bullet hit me square in the chest. Just came straight at me. And it literally felt like somebody swung a ball bat and hit you in the chest as hard as they could. It just lifted me completely up in the air. So all that weight, see, I weighed 180 some pounds, and then with about 50 pounds of ammunition and everything else you can think on me, my gun in my hand, but I went right up in the air, literally lifted me up in the air. And I fell flat on my back in the grass behind me. It just hit me so hard. And of course somebody yelled medic, and the medic come crawling up, to me. And all it was a burn. The bullet just hit and bounced off. It just a deep burn. It didn't even bleed. It just burned it. And nobody could figure it out. There's no way we could figure out what happened.
Wow.
But I still didn't think it was a miracle. It was the second one God had performed.
No.
And I still didn't think it was a miracle.
Yeah.
We just didn't know what to think of it. It was just one of those things where you say, well, my gosh, I didn't even get a Purple Heart.
Yeah.
So anyway, we went on, and some more things happened. But then our second engagement was Okinawa. And that was the big one. And there, we had a slaughter. Our outfit, by the way, 96th Division, I could give you a little paper that tells you a story of this. I wrote a little paper on it. Our division killed more Japs than any outfit in the Pacific. We killed 20,000 of them on the Leyte and 30,000 on Okinawa. And they called us the Deadeyes.
Wow.
And the funny part of it is, you remember Tokyo Rose?
Yeah.
You heard of her, didn't you?
Yeah.
Well, one day on the radio, she got angry. This was written up right in the newspaper.
Uh-huh.
I hear it myself. I got read it in the newspaper. She got angry one day, and she burst out in anger. She said, that dirty, rotten 96th Division, she said, they're just a bunch of gangsters. They built that division, they took the gangsters and the people, the filth of Chicago, and they put them in there, and they're like murderers. She was so angry, she called us that because we were killing so many Japs.
Wow.
But also we had more casualties.
Yeah.
Our regiment, and especially our battalion, had more casualties than the Marines ever had on Okinawa, on Iwo Jima or anything. When we landed on Okinawa, we had about 160 men in our company. And 52 days later, when I was wounded, there was 13 of us standing. 13 out of 160. Everybody else had been wiped out, killed, or badly wounded.
Right.
And then I was hit that day. and that was the end. It was right at the end of the battle, practically. For our group, at least, we didn't have any more battles after that. They did, but that was took me clear to the States. It was shrapnel in my neck. I got hit in the neck with shrapnel, and so we really had a slaughter. And we'd had about 200 replacements during that 52 days. So that would make 360 men approximately. And the day I was wounded, there were 42 of us of the 360, with a replacement lieutenant in charge of us. And we were sent on a suicide mission that day. We'd been stopped, our regiment was stopped, and there was a big hill, the place where the Japs were, and they were very vicious, and they'd stopped us. But our regiment decided to make an all-out attack on it. But there was a little hill, right out in no man's land, about halfway between us and the Japs, or something like that. And that hill, they got the bright idea, if they sent us out on that hill, to take that hill the day before the battle, before the attack, we could give covering fire from that hill, because it acted like a screen. You couldn't see part of the Jap lines because of it, so we couldn't see what we were doing. And so here they sent us out there. They gave us 5 tanks, or 4 tanks, 5 or 4, and we were to follow those tanks out to that island, out to that little hill, and take it. And of course, we didn't know whether the Japs were on the hill or not, but they weren't. There was nobody there. It was just in no man's land. And those tanks were scared to death. The tanks, the Japs had this dual-purpose 77. It would do anti-aircraft, but it would also anti-tank. And it was very deadly against tanks, our tanks. And they were scared to death of that. They were afraid they might have it. So they figured if they got out there in no man's land, way out in the middle of no man's land like that, all of a sudden those things open up, they'd be sitting ducks. So they were calculating to keep us, that hill as a barrier between us and the Japanese lines. And they were using that as a shield, and they kept stopping. And I would get on the radio. They had a phone in the back of the tank, way back in the back, and you could pick it up and talk to the driver. And I kept telling him, "What are you stopping for? Keep going, keep going." And they would, then finally they'd move, but they'd move real slow and move a little bit and stop again. They were stalling. They didn't want to go out there. And so finally, they got close, and they'd stalled long enough that they could suddenly run up their little orange flags, a little pennant that would mean they're out of gas. And they said, "We got to go back, we're out of gas." And they turned around and left us. And so we had to go on alone to the hill. Yeah. And sure enough, the minute we got up there where the Japs could see us, they opened up with those 77s. They had them.
They did have them.
And they turned them on us.
Wow.
If those tanks had gone on up, 1 or 2 of them at least would have been knocked out probably.
Yeah.
So in a way they were smart. They knew that was a suicide thing and they didn't want anything to do with it, but they were just had to follow orders, but they faked it and left us in the lurch, but it's okay.
Now, I was just introduced to you you're Dr. John.
Yes.
Now, did you get out of the service and go into the medical profession, or?
Yes. Actually, I got, of course, a medical discharge finally, and I had post-traumatic stress syndrome, but we didn't know what that was in that day, so they didn't think of it, But my records show I had it.
Yeah.
But see, the Lord had so worked, because He just kept doing miracles. Like one night I was completely dug out of a hole, with a 105 millimeter artillery shell. Just literally dug me out of a hole, and yet I lived. And that was one of the most horrible things. And there was a lot of things involved in that, and just over and over the Lord. And so pretty soon I knew the Lord was. You couldn't mistake it. I knew God was saving my life. I didn't know why. I couldn't figure it out. I had no idea what was going on. but I knew God was saving my life, and so I was in awe. So finally, when I was wounded, and I remember in Hawaii, I was in the hospital in Hawaii finally, I looked up one night. I was in a line outdoors waiting to eat, you know, because I could walk around. And I looked up and I saw the stars up there. And I always remember that moment. I looked up there and I looked at those stars and I said, my gosh, the God who made that actually knows me personally and went out of his way to save my life in battle. Why, Lord? What is going on? I couldn't, but my life was changed forever. You know, I immediately started, you know, evangelism, you might say, trying to win other people into in the Lord. And
So you went off to medical school?
well, at first I was going to go to Kansas University, and so I witnessed, and I even got rushed for a fraternity and everything because that had been my hometown.
Yeah.
But then this dear old lady had led me to the Lord.
The original lady.
She taught me, and she said, if you go there, you might lose your faith because they'll just teach you terrible things. She said, I want you to go to a Christian school. So I said, well, okay, you know. So I decided to go to Bob Jones University.
You did? Okay.
And so that's where I went.
Yeah.
And I spent 3 years in Bob Jones University. But then all of a sudden I learned about Prairie Bible Institute. Prairie Bible Institute, you may never have heard of it, but it was a wonderful Bible institute up in Canada, in Three Hills, Alberta, Canada, near Calgary.
Okay.
And it's really was the biggest Bible school on the North American continent, and yet nobody ever even heard of it hardly. It was big, way up there in the middle of nowhere, in the cold. Man, it was cold, but it was a deeper life school. They were teaching the deeper life, the all-out life. Everything was absolute discipleship. Lay your life on the line, and missions, strong on mission. So I loved that school, and I spent 2 years there, I guess. And I graduated because they gave me credit from the Bob Jones, and I went home back to Lawrence, Kansas. But it was quite a while. See, first, my life's been so long that there's time for other things, and you know, the Lord called me to start a publishing ministry in the 50s. And all of a sudden I got this burden. It was just such a powerful, it was just a call. And so I knew I had to do that. And so I did. I started a magazine called Voice in the Wilderness. And the idea was it was a deeper life magazine, sort of calling the church to go all out with the Lord and everything, you know. And God blessed that magazine. But we decided to do commercial printing to earn our way while we were doing the Christian thing. So we also started publishing books and became a publishing company. And so we were prepared, and then when the charismatic revival came, see, you may not know of it, but in the 60s there was this powerful revival.
Yeah, I was part of it in the 1970s.
Was it still going a little bit that late?
Oh, yeah. It did.
But anyway, it was powerful because
Yeah.
it went in, and all these churches, like I told you, were completely modernistic. Well,
Yep.
it blasted that.
Yep.
Even the Catholic Church, a
Yep.
whole bunch of them were speaking in tongues.
Yeah,
and
I was
everything
part of
else.
that. I was part of that.
And I was right in the middle of the heart of that.
Yep.
I was just, and our publishing company became the main publisher to publish books for that. You know,
Like chosen books.
it's sort of like that. Only we were the only ones at first.
Yeah.
Our books were like Face Up with a Miracle and Glow with the Spirit and Come Away My Beloved. These books were really popular. And so all during the 60s, I was up to my ears with it. And we actually grew to the point we started with a little 1250 multilith in a garage. And 1250 multilith, you know, about this long, and you know, just a small press. Print 8.5 by 11 sheets,
Right.
biggest. And
how can you see
before we were through, 10 years later,
And I said,
or even less than 10 years, we had
why I need two doctors?
Four-
Well, two is always
four
better than
buildings.
one.
Four
I
different
refuse to
bays
go
in a
to
big
doctors,
thing.
take two visits,
And we had two
just
big
to
Harris
look at
presses
something.
higher than your head.
Good.
You know, to stand higher than your great big 35-inch Harris presses. We had two of them. And we had our own bindery
She's a cancer
with
doctor. She
two
must
bindery. We had an automatic bindery to do our magazine, you know,
They say
and
after you put fake
in
books,
fact, when we got that donated to us, and I went to look at it when they were getting ready to give it to us, and Life magazine was coming off of it. It was doing the calls on Life magazine. It was not on the main line because they'd already set it back.
Yeah.
It was old. But we got it, and we cut it down from 6. You know, those big binderies have 16 stations, so they can have 16 different signatures and put them all together and then trim them and everything and come out finished magazine. And we cut it down to 4 because 4 is all we could possibly use and need.
yeah, because it was,
And so that was.
and then I asked
We had
her,
quite a
the other
printing plant.
doctor
We had
that
our own
she
camera,
was
but
with,
a
I said,
small
"Look,
camera, and
if you're so
and we
kind,
started doing. We did
every
commercial
month,
printing
more
to
we needed,
pay our way,
not just that.
and then did the Christian printing as unto the Lord.
Why?
And in fact, we had our main. We had Baskin Robbins account. We printed 1 million copies of their ice cream of the months and everything. And we had the largest new car advertising agency on the West Coast in direct mail
Wow.
for 6-hour advertising. We did all their printing.
Wow.
And that was our big account. That would take about a week of our time every month. And that's where we made our big money. But anyway, that was seemingly a whole life.
Wow.
But you know, all of a sudden, God called me to be a doctor. Here I was, president of a publishing company that we raised up, and suddenly I get this burden to be a doctor. How it's so strange, but I couldn't. It was so powerful. I couldn't fight it off. So finally, I just said, "I'm going, and I'm just going to close the thing up and go." And I didn't do it right. It happened so suddenly and developed. There was a lot involved. Because there's a lot of people dependent on it and everything. And we even had our own corporation called Voice Christian Publications and everything.
I'm sorry.
But I didn't. The guy that did our printing, our camera work, had a big camera outfit. You know, cameras as big as this room. You know, he bought it from me. He bought the whole printing outfit from me for just a song. I just practically gave it to him. And he became fabulously rich with that printing outfit plus his camera. He told me later, he met me one day and he told me, he said, "John," he said, "you made me rich." He said, "We've gone to Europe and we've done all kinds of things and lived the big life because you gave us that printing plant." But anyway, I just dropped everything and determined to go back to school to be a doctor. And here I was in my 40s. And of course, medical school wouldn't let me in, so I went to chiropractic school.
Did you
and
really?
Even they were reluctant to take me because I'd had some training in engineering, a little bit, you know, in the war, and that's all. And otherwise, it was mostly Bible because in Bob Jones, I majored in Bible and minored in history for 3 years. And then in Prairie Bible Institute, it was all Bible. And so. Anyway, I remember them telling me, they said, well, Mr. Myers, they said, "You're not really qualified to come in. You don't have any pre-med at all, hardly." But they said, I wanted to so bad. I was so eager. And they said, "I'll tell you what we'll do." They said, "Do you like to study?" I said, "Well, I'll study." He said, "Well, you're going to have to really study because we're